In the early part of 1980, I had moved from California to the Maryland, Washington, D.C. area. Just after that, it came on the news that on the West Coast, there was an old man by the name of Mr. Truman who was living in Washington State. He had lived all his life on this mountain called Mount St. Helens. And he said this is the place he calls home. During that time, there were some extra earthquakes taking place on the mountains with a few rumblings, and they told Mr. Truman, you need to move. And he says, no, I was here all my life. I'm definitely not moving because of a few rumbles. And as the seismic activities on that mountain increased, they finally, the state decided to evacuate the entire mountain. They figured that there was a volcanic eruption that would be very soon to follow. And so they evacuated everybody. But Mr. Truman said, no. I've lived here. I can handle anything this mountain can dish out. On May 9th, who had finally died. Oftentimes we have warnings that come to us. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 37 to 39, it says, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark. And knew not until the flood came and took them away, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. This morning I'd like us to think a little bit about our inhabitants of this earth. Amos chapter for the final. They will Christ. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. The world is looking for peace. Individuals are they're looking for some kind of satisfaction in life. All of us are looking for something like that. We want to have life with a purpose, life with a meaning. When you see people in the world today, they have all sorts of people in the world, in society. I spent a couple of weeks at the beginning of last month in India. It was my first trip to that place in India where almost one out of every 6 people on earth actually live in India. It's hard to believe if you count every 6th person. It's just a little bit under that amount. It's 5 point something, I believe, that live in India itself. And it's a marvel to me. So many people there driving everywhere. Road rules mean nothing. People just go where they want to go. And then you look at the poverty, and what really struck me is as I look at that poverty, why are they staying in poverty? They're looking for something in their existence. And majority of them are Hindu, and so they believe that they are in poverty because of what they had done in a previous life. And in order to improve their future, they have to accept what it is here. And so they're willing to live in that environment of poverty, hoping that somehow in the future they'll be reincarnated into something better in society. People are looking for peace. They're looking for something, if not at least in this world, at least in a future life. But he says that ye brethren are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. It's true, in society as a whole, people will see the coming of Jesus as a thief coming in the night. But not so among God's people. Why? Because ye are the children of the light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. We are not a people who are in darkness. We are not a people who are to be taken by surprise at once at the coming of Jesus Christ. But I have a question for you this morning. Do we really believe this? Do we really believe that the end of all things is at hand? Are we really convinced personally that this world is only our temporary place? Or are we here with a hope that it will last a little bit longer? The verse says, because we know these things, let us watch and be sober. What does sober mean? Here's some definitions from Webster's dictionary about being sober. It means to be temperate, not drunk, to be serious, to be solemn, to be grave or sedate, to be quiet, to be plain, not extravagant or distorted. Let us watch, and at the same time as we are watching, let us be, and here's a list of some things that we need to be experiencing. If you know something dramatic is about to take place, it's not easy to be jolly in a sense. You look at the seriousness of the time and you prepare for those events. And actually, the apostle says, there are in the world today many who close their eyes to the evidences that Christ has given to warn men of His coming. People are always looking for something better. I was in Italy the last couple of weeks, and the economy is still struggling. It is still struggling from the collapse that happened back in 2008. It's hard to believe that this has been already, 6 or 7 years. And a lot of places still have not recovered. Here in Australia, we don't feel it as much. But in many countries, they feel it. Greece is going through a real struggle. Now, Italy is not going as big of a struggle as in Greece, but they are feeling the crunch. And yet, people are looking for better times. And we hope that economically there may be better times yet. But what about for society as a whole? Do we really believe that Christ actually is coming soon? Now, many of us, we may not say Jesus is not coming soon. We won't say that. Our name, Adventist, says that we believe in the soon coming of Christ. So we are not going to proclaim that we're no longer Adventists. We wouldn't do that. In Luke chapter 12, verse 45 and 46 talks about a group of individuals who are not going to declare that Christ is not coming soon, but at the same time, they are declaring that Christ is not coming soon. It says, but if that servant say in his heart, notice here, he is not saying this openly, but he is saying it only in his heart, my Lord delayeth His coming, and shall begin to beat the men servants and maidens, and to eat and drink, and to be drunken. The Lord of that servant will come in a day when he looketh not for him, and at an hour when he is not aware, and will cut him in sunder, and will appoint his portion with the unbelievers. How many of us really believe that Christ is coming soon? I mean, obviously there are certain things in life that we need to do. We need to live while we are here. We need to go to work. We need to pay our bills. We have to have a place to stay. But are we really looking forward to a different world? Or are we getting a little bit comfortable in this life? They seek to quiet all apprehension, again in Acts of the Apostles, while at the same time the signs of the end are rapidly fulfilling, and the world is hastening to the time when the Son of Man shall be revealed in the clouds of heaven. In some parts of society, the end of the world is not that far off. On my way from Abu Dhabi to Sydney, I was sitting next to a woman. She had just come back from Sierra Leone. She spent 6 weeks in Sierra Leone. And she lives in Canberra. This is her second time in Sierra Leone. She's obviously you cannot travel to Sierra Leone that easily. So she had to go quite a long ways around to get to Sierra Leone. She's a nurse. And she was working with the workers who work with Ebola, directly with Ebola. The first time she actually went in and worked with Ebola, she was there for 3 months when the epidemic first happened last year. And now again, she was there now for 6 weeks. Of course, everyone thinks that she's crazy for doing that. But she's very happy in the work that she was doing there. And I told her, wow, I guess I better be careful here, eh? She says, no, you have nothing to fear unless I kiss you, and that's not a chance for doing that. But she gave, she's giving her life for that. But when you go there, a lot of people have died. A lot of people, the end of the world is a reality to them, not just sometime in the future. The diseases that people are experiencing are traumatic diseases, and in this case here, diseases are constantly coming up which they have no real cure for it. And of course she was mentioning that Ebola has been around for a long time. This is not something new. The only reason that it came to the notice of the outside of the world itself was because of a few Westerners. They got sick from it, and therefore they got a little bit concerned. But people there have been living with it for years. And what makes it more difficult is people are hungry. And they go and they don't have the best of equipment to go kill animals to eat. The catch that you're going to eat is one that probably has Ebola. And so you kill that monkey and it gets transferred to you. Cook them well enough, but unfortunately they don't cook them. They eat them practically the way they are. There are diseases that have baffled humanity and their existence, and yet people are fighting that apprehension. As the look is giving us a warning, the future, the Sunday law, and some of those things, and somehow in our as best we start seeing those prophetic events, we're going to change and get ready for eternity. I don't know how many of us have thought, maybe even today we're thinking, okay, yeah, we are getting ready a little bit, but seriously when I start seeing certain events take place. But I'm trying to at least cook the meat a little bit longer so that it'll kill the virus. They're accustomed to this, and they're going to do, and as a result, they sick and they die. And when a person, they end up being cared of by their family, and as a result, the family then also gets that disease. And the hospitals, even themselves, are not prepared for them, even today. She was in a special unit in those cases. But when a person goes to the hospital, they are treated as normal, and many of the hospital staff end up with the same thing. It's hard to change our practices. It's a little bit easier in the Western society to adapt to a little bit more precaution, because if you go to the hospital, there are many precautions you have. In Patriarchs and Prophets, it says here the history of Israel's first king, the submission, ready to rebel against it. And especially those of us who are a younger person right now. As you are young, you're trying to experiment with life. You're trying to figure out what's out. And to complicate matters, the frontal lobe of the brain, which is able to do a little bit more judicious thinking, does not fully develop until a person's 25 years of age. And so you have a lot of difficulties along the way, but you see, if you don't change in the youth, it's not that easy to change later on. It says, those who cherish a sacred regard to perform the duties of their position will be prepared for higher service and after them. And then when they choose to change, find these powers fresh and free for an entirely opposite course. We can't go on for life. So as we were thinking as kids that we're going to live life, just do the formal things in church, and then all of a sudden when we see those signs happening, we're going to change. We're going to become something better. All of it happened that way. The nature that's been developing for so many years took Saul in a different course of action. Saul, finally, he could not respect God no matter what. God gave him opportunity after opportunity. He could not respect God. And he lost his life and lost everything. He actually decided to go to the witch of Endor because God had no longer communicated with him. Well, actually God was trying to communicate with him, but he had closed every avenue for communication. And this is why it's so important in our younger years to give our heart to the Lord. The younger you are, the less baggage you have to deal with. The younger you are to finally come to full surrender. And this is the struggle that we have in life. The struggle that we have for heaven is the struggle of surrender. It's not that easy for us to yield. Yielding is a very difficult thing to do. So, again in Acts of the Apostles, Paul teaches that it is sinful to be indifferent to the signs which are to precede the second coming of Christ. How many of us are negligent? How many of us even like the study of prophecy? I talk to a lot of individuals and they tell me, well, I'm not really interested in prophecy. Well, what are you really interested in? Oftentimes we find that we're interested simply in living and leaving everything else. We'd like it to where we can leave it to the preacher for religious things. We can leave it to the doctor for health things. We can leave it for everybody else so that when something goes wrong we can say, well, they're at fault. It's very difficult. That's our human nature. It's very difficult for us to take responsibility for our own actions. And we manifest our indifference in many different ways. Obviously in the way we eat, the way we dress, the way we work, choice of our music, our educational ideas, the way we live, our environment, and even the friends that we choose. All of this may show our indifference towards the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is the reality of our lifestyle. This is on a daily basis. People are examining us, and what do they see? Do they see a people getting ready for the soon coming of Christ, or what do they see? Those guilty of this neglect he calls children of the night and of darkness. That's what we find in the verses that we read in 1 Thessalonians. If we are seriously negligent in this area, we're not of the light. Matter of fact, we will be taken unawares by the second coming of Christ. In 1 Peter 2 verse 9, as he talks about the people of God, he says, "But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, with him who is out of darkness, marvelous light." How do you feel if you are in darkness inside us sometimes? God has called us darkness, called us to marvelous light. So, what warning does he give? Going back to it says, "But ye, brethren, that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all the children of the day, nor of." We are not in that category. He goes on in verse 6. "Therefore let us not sleep and sober, for they that sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. They be sober, or everything." Depression. Why are they? Sometimes there are physical that create depression, and obviously it's important to study. Sometimes we have lifestyle creates depression. Learn about proper life, and that helps all the necessary faith. Then no matter, when we talk about faith, faith is a direct antidote towards worry. I was listening to as a result of guilt. Altogether, it was like 95 or 96 about things that are right now. Experience appears. And we can invest the 5% we do. And so Christianity, they're going to have, so we're concerned about the future. Something is action industry here in Australia where I live. They have all these new regulations. They have regulations that some of the regulations are because of bushfires. They have some expense, so that's no vision for that. Have to worry. In 1 Peter it says, the things is at hand, be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. So the fact is that the end of all caring, in my particular, before I could do any exterior remodeling on the house, I had to get a rating, a bushfire rating. And once they got my number, in my case, then you can only use material regulated with that. So you cannot just go or ambers from the fire in that region. And in doing so, worrying about a bush, but you are making preparations. We're not to be many of us bushfire. Question: even here, I've had at least 2 bushfire alerts because there's a bushfire way and starts coming in our direction in our neighborhood, and so you need to be prepared. So yeah, but nothing happened. I mean, we got this warning. People, we have a tendency when it comes and it doesn't happen, we at all. And 3 and 4, we're doing it for Christ, knowing that will come in the last days, scoffers walking continue as they were from the beginning of the church. And so as there are warnings about whether it's or the tsunami happened, just the other day they had up there in Queensland, they had the earthquake that was off the coast there, and there's no tsunami warning because it was not of that capacity. But what about when there is? And nothing happening, complacency in life. And so many of us are complacent about this is coming soon. Our fathers had that experience in when the first outbreak of World War took place. We have just finished this is now 1 year ago is when World War I. We're still here. Why? Why is it come? Why? But here it says in 2 Peter, it is not slack concerning this promise that all should come. Heaven that for you has people are simply not ready, and God's not willing that any should perish. And the way we live our daily life, watching is another aspect, and part of watching you have association. It says in Matthew 24:24, there shall arise false Christ. That we need to be sober and pray. It is because it's tragic when or sometimes even workers are no longer on this. And unless we are serious about the time to really, it's very possible at that time. And then what? Again, volume 3, I have seen that there is danger that even the professed children are adopted. You and me, that's right. We are of God. And the problem is that there is a danger to slip into complacency. And he was living in the midst of an evil society. And what would have didn't go there? Life and environment, something. I mean, I was in the day, and up in the church, he kind of went his way. About a year ago, he had an accident. We should really do something about it, but he slipped back out. The other day, he had another car accident. I think it was 8 ribs broken, and he fell to wake us up. We had a funeral here not long ago. The brother, he was sick, and he says, I really thank the Lord for him. He says, let me see that what the devil have to wait for that. Do we have to wait for some strong event like that? The angels to come and grab Lot out of the hands and say, Sodom, get out of here. And unfortunately, it says here in Genesis 19:6, he was there. The angel said, what happened? This is not a human being. This is not some other The angels of God were there. He recognized his angels. They said, "Get out of here." And while he what did he do? He was still lingering. I mean, how many of us are still? The men laid hold upon his hand and upon the hand of the hand, being merciful unto him, and they brought him without the city. I mean, are we waiting for that event? Something like that? The angels would grab us and say, "Come on, get out of here. This place is..." And you know, he lost his life and his own soul. And in the act of delay, he did his wife. And the act of delay, what attitude children have. Sorrowful case when the of lost. And yet today, although we need more different things, well, I understand we do need bodies. The life-giving stimulus who has named the name of Christ. We have this opportunity to come and grab of what we're living. In a lot of places, I'm telling you, what we need is a good preacher. We need someone to preach to us every week. We need to have a preacher too. And yet, you know, we just read this statement just a few minutes ago that priesthood, a holy nation, one of us have a responsibility in evangelism. Yet, even with the best preacher, Jesus was the best preacher the world ever had. And even with Jesus as the best preacher, not everyone was blessed by him, nor did they receive salvation from him. They would not accept. You know, sometimes we want a preacher to make us happy with ourselves. Jesus gave happiness to everybody was happy. Every responsibility here. We have to come of seeing our needs. Again, 473, dangers and perils surround us. We're safe when we feel our weakness and cling with the grasp of faith to our mighty deliverer. We cannot cease watchfulness and prayer for a moment. Our helpless rely on Jesus, our compassionate Redeemer. He can't help me until I see my needs. In Sodom, he had to live. In India, you can see all the different gods. You go into their temples, you have all their gods everywhere. And they worship just about anything. We're holding some meetings. As we finish the meetings, I mean, the thing is when you're giving to find it and trying to help people understand Jesus is there. And off you, they won't let you go. No, this is not. Sorry. No. People want to worship something. We may look at that society and we can see it so clearly different gods. God may be our attitude. Immorality. Somebody else's have how many? And Australia here are God. And yet how many of us are doing that right here? And unless we realize, and the countries, but I have found that we're facing gods, facing those gods, and the basic thing is we need to realize our need. The future, yes, look at as something worse. It really is, but the future that is coming is the seed of God. To ask done in the body how earnestly they would work together with God to present the truth. Individually as ministers and workers, but also every single member, we have pledged ourselves, church members, to be working. And we have a reach out to the world that is out there in darkness, out to. And we need to work together to be able coastal area. Sharing with the world, proclaiming in word and deed, prepare to meet thy God is the message we are everywhere to proclaim. We live and dress and eat and act no different than the world. Sometimes we may give a message, a powerful message, and our life is not to that message. What effect will this have on people? It may be like down. And the warning is to ring out, Babylon the greatest out of that you be not partakers of or experience the separation of Babylon out of us. So what if they and they fellowship with us and they see our life? Is our life a manifestation of character? It's an important question for us to truly evaluate, and this is a good time for us to think about it. Responsible. It says in Ezekiel, thou, son of man, I have said to the house of Israel, therefore thou shalt hear the word out and warn them for me. The wicked, thou shalt surely die if thou dost not. Will I require taking a look at nation, taking a look at the world, both by gospel if they are not reached. As we look at society around us, we are training and getting ready to even be more effective. We talk about in a lot of places I travel, and compared to membership, we don't have a lot of students in the missionary schools. Why not? Life here. That's for somebody else. But how many of us are given this message to actually warn the world? To watch and be sober. And maybe if we ourselves, some of us are in a line work that we cannot leave at the moment, but can we support maybe some students to go and do that? In Thessalonians it says they were children of the light. They knew the signs. They know that there are signs. They can see the events. We all have signs in the seasons. But the question is, how long will God wait? How long is God till everything comes to an end? How long is that going to happen? You look back at Sodom. Lot left. He got out. Genesis 19:20. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered. In other words, in Sodom the sun rose up like you got up in a normal day. There was no difference from that. Got up. They all died. The wing, possible that it's the wing of that airline's flight that crashed the Indian Ocean. They figure they got some evidence that wing that might light. It's way over and near. Thinking about that flight quite a bit when I left Australia last time, because my flight was on Malaysian Airlines. Going by was through Kuala, and just thinking a little bit about that. For those people on board, the day began just there was absolutely no difference. The flight wasn't very long, or wherever it was going. It wasn't going to be very long, the flight itself. And disappeared. And for you and me, it happened to every one of us. We may die. We don't have to live. But what are we living? The Jewish church, when you look in Great Controversy 6:15, when God's presence was finally withdrawn from the Jewish nation, priests and people knew it. They had no idea. It was just like any other. So under the control of Satan and swayed by malignant passions, they still regarded themselves as of God. The temple continued. Sacrifices were offered upon its polluted altars, and daily the divine blessing was invoked upon a people guilty of the blood of God's dear Son, to slay his ministers and apostles. The irrevocable decision of the sanctuary has been pronounced. The destiny of the world has been forever fixed. No, it's not. It's finally been with the zeal with which the prince of evil will accomplishment of his malignant designs will bear semblance for zeal for God. And as we look at our own experiences, what's going to happen? True. I mean, how many of us, we've known the message all of our lives? I mean, many of us have known all these things, and what are we doing about it? Is it enough for us to truly evaluate where we are today? The leaders still believed they were the children of God. They still believed that they understood all the prophecies. And so what about you and me today? It comes to us in Matthew 24, verse 42. Watch therefore, for you know not what hour the Lord doth come. We don't know what the time is. We don't know how much time we got left. That young man there in Italy, as I was there by his hospital bed, for several days they couldn't do any surgery with him because he was in such a bad shape. Leg, the night before I came there, they have to cut the hole, go in there and fix the leg. The rib bones, there's nothing you can do on those. You just got to wait on that one. You know, life can disappear very quickly. But it says here, watch therefore, for you know not what hour the Lord doth come. Or whether we are talking about life coming to an end, know it today, we have an obligation to watch and to be ready. So as we come to our conclusion, I'd like to read something here from Desire of Ages. It says, after he had given the sign, I said, when you see these things come to pass, the kingdom of God is nigh at hand. Take ye heed, watch and pray. God has always given men warning judgment. God has always done that. Those who had and who acted out their faith in obedience escaped the judgments that fell upon the disobedient. So Christ's disciples were given warning of the destruction of Jerusalem. Today we have a message, and the question is, are we going to act out our faith? Or are we expecting to have a life in this world? Those who watched the sun and fled from the city escaped the destruction. So now we are given warning of Christ's second coming and of the destruction of those who heed the warning. God wants to save. God wants to save me. We can't do it without our permission. You know, the story of a dam in Pennsylvania. For days the rain was steady torrents. The dam was already 30 feet. Brown and swirling, it reached almost to its crest, and still the rain had. They wish they've always been thinking something should be done to protect the town. And one day, as they were going about their normal business, every once in a while looking upstream, thinking, how long would that dam hold? All of a sudden, the earth trembled beneath the water outwards, releasing a surging 30-foot wall, everything that stood upon its path. It wasn't long. How long does it take? In a few 19, 45 were seriously injured. Buildings and ravaged into worthless junk. Threat was there. Are we really aware? Words from 1 Thessalonians 1. I have no need that I write unto you. will know perfectly that the day will say peace and safety, then sudden destruction them as travail upon a woman. Children are not in darkness. They take you as a thief. We're not of the night nor of the dark. Not sleep as do others, but let us watch. May the Lord help us that today, something else for Sydney, that the entire place may know that there is a God in heaven. Jesus loves them, and they need to get ready for the world's final crisis.